From now on, my husband started ignoring me as if I was invisible. He wouldn't respond to my greetings or say goodbye when he left for the day. Even at dinner, he barely acknowledged me. It felt like I wasn't even there. His mom, who we lived with, treated me the same way. Despite us all living together, they acted like I didn't exist. They didn't listen when I spoke. Instead, they would chat happily while I ate alone in the kitchen, feeling isolated and sad. Their laughter from the living room felt like they were making fun of me. It made me cry. After a year of feeling invisible, my husband finally spoke up. He reminded me of what he said a year ago, that if I had any problems, I could leave. But he laughed, saying as a homemaker, I didn't have any options. My name is Anna, and I'm 34 years old. I met my husband Jackson 3 years ago through a friend. I had been focused on my job since college, never really getting into serious relationships. But my friend thought Jackson and I might hit it off. Jackson was successful, working at a top company. Our backgrounds seemed different, but he showed interest in me. We started dating and soon talked about marriage. Both our families met, and despite my concerns about living with his mom, Jackson insisted we live together. Moving in with his mom meant quitting my job and adjusting to a long commute. Jackson promised to make me happy, so I trusted him and moved into his mom's place. His mother greeted me warmly, and Jackson seemed genuinely thankful that I agreed to live together. I felt optimistic about our future. After quitting my job, I focused on taking care of the house and getting to know our neighbors. Learning cooking tips from my mother-in-law and chatting about bargains at the supermarket with the neighbors was a pleasant change. One day, Jackson came home looking exhausted, which was unusual for him. Concerned, I asked if he had a tough day at work. He admitted he did and sighed heavily. Then he looked at me seriously and said he needed a favor. He felt embarrassed to ask, but he needed help with a new project he was leading. There was a lot of paperwork to sort out, and he asked if I could handle it. I reassured him, saying we were a team and that I'd do whatever I could to help. My response brought a slight smile to his face. He explained that he needed me to organize some online materials for him. It wasn't as serious as I expected, but I was happy to help. Adjusting to our new life together, I had been considering trying something new anyway. So, I started helping out with various tasks, like organizing paperwork, whenever I had some free time. It felt good to support my husband. I didn't mind lightening his workload. But after 2 months of doing this, I began to feel exhausted. Balancing his work and household chores was becoming too much for me. At first, it was simple internet research, but it gradually turned into creating presentation materials. Soon, I was handling all the presentation documents. It was overwhelming, and I didn't have much time left for housework. That's when I decided to talk to Jackson about taking a break from helping with his work. I explained that it was tough to manage both house chores and preparing presentation materials at the same time. I'd offered to stick to light research like before. As we were getting ready for bed one night, I turned to Jackson and mentioned it. He suddenly sat up looking surprised. His face hardened quickly. He didn't take it well. He responded with sarcasm, saying he had been depending on my help for the project. He dismissed my concerns, implying that as a homemaker, I wouldn't understand. I was shocked. Jackson, who was usually kind and cheerful, said hurtful things. I was speechless. He didn't listen to me and just went back to bed, ignoring my protests. Then he said he would treat me like I was invisible from now on. It felt like a slap in the face. I couldn't believe he would say something like that. I tried to argue back, but he ignored me and went back to sleep. Despite my efforts to wake him, Jackson had already fallen asleep. True to his word, he started ignoring me completely. He didn't respond to my greetings in the morning, or when I said goodbye as he left for work. Even at dinner time, he acted as if I wasn't there. His mom acted the same way, pretending I didn't exist, even though we shared the same space. It was painfully awkward, and no matter how much I tried to start a conversation, she wouldn't acknowledge me. Gradually, Jackson started having meals just with his mom, leaving me to eat alone in the kitchen. Their laughter from the living room felt like they were mocking me, and it made me feel so sad that I wanted to cry. I couldn't help but think that maybe some of this was my fault. If I had been better at managing the house chores and assisting Jackson, maybe things wouldn't have turned out like this. I hoped that Jackson was just angry and that things would get better with time. But I didn't have the courage to stand up for myself, so I just endured it. Days turned into weeks, and before I knew it, nearly a year had passed. Jackson and my mother-in-law continued to ignore me, even cutting off my allowance. I had to rely on my savings from before we were married just to get by. As I was bringing in laundry for all of us, I sighed, wondering why I had even gotten married. I thought about lunch and started heading downstairs from the second-floor balcony to the living room on the first floor. But then I made a mistake. I missed a step and fell down the stairs, landing with a loud thud. It hurt, and I rubbed my sore backside, grateful that it didn't seem like I had any serious injuries. As I sat there, bracing myself for a massive bruise on my butt, I heard hurried footsteps from the living room. My mother-in-law rushed over, asking if I was okay, and if I had fallen down the stairs. She seemed genuinely concerned, which was surprising since we hadn't really talked in a long time. Overwhelmed by the sudden conversation, I blurted out that I hadn't heard her voice in so long. She froze, looking surprised. Quickly realizing I had said something odd, I tried to cover it up with a cheerful tone, saying I wasn't hurt and it was nice to talk to her again. I even threw in a playful joke to lighten the mood, but she looked like she was about to cry. Then she asked if I hated her. I was confused. Why would she think that? She started revealing something shocking. About a year ago, when Jackson started ignoring me, he somehow convinced his mother that I hated her and that it was best for her not to talk to me. It seemed like Jackson didn't like me disobeying him, so he isolated me at home, maybe to control me. I couldn't believe that Jackson, who was always kind and adored by everyone, could do something so terrible. And his mom, who was also kind-hearted, believed him completely, thinking I despised her. I reassured her that I liked her and appreciated all the things she had done for me, like sharing cooking secrets and welcoming me with open arms. She seemed to believe me and apologized for not verifying the truth with me first. She suggested that we confront Jackson about this when he got back from work. After that, we spent a lot of time catching up, and it was the most enjoyable time I had had in recent memory. It felt good to finally clear the air and have a real conversation with my mother-in-law. Jackson came back from work, looking surprised to see me and his mom chatting away. He quickly brushed it off and grabbed a beer from the fridge, acting as if everything was normal. But his mom wasn't having it. She calmly told him to sit down because they needed to talk. Without a word, he took a seat at the table. His mom didn't beat around the bush. She told Jackson to stop tormenting me and apologize right there and then. But Jackson scoffed, asking for evidence and acting confident that he hadn't done anything wrong. And he was right. There was no hard evidence to prove his mistreatment of me. Both his mom and I were speechless. Then Jackson turned to me and asked if I really hated him that much, reminding me that he had suggested I leave a year ago, knowing I wouldn't have many options as a homemaker with no income. He was right. I wouldn't be able to support myself if I left, even though my parents couldn't take me in either. But I had enough. I couldn't stay with him any longer. I brushed off his mother's pleas for me to stay and started packing my things. I only took what I needed for the immediate future and thanked them before leaving. A week later, I was staying at a hotel near the train station, sorting out my future plans. Then Jackson called me, furious about a letter I supposedly sent to his workplace, accusing him of being a bully and a slacker. I played dumb, pretending I had no idea what he was talking about. But in reality, I had written that letter after leaving his mom's house. I embellished the truth, making him out to be much worse than he actually was, and now he was facing consequences at work because of it. He was furious, but I had no regrets. Jackson was long gone, likely shouting and with a demonic expression. If you claim so, you must have proof, right? Go on, "Show me the evidence that I mailed the letter." I retorted with the exact words he had thrown at me just days ago. His fury peaked, and he started shrieking unintelligibly. There was no reasoning with him anymore, so I just ended the call, saying, "Well, I'll hang up then." The following day, I swung by my in-laws' house to discuss the future with Jackson. We hadn't scheduled anything, but since it was Sunday, he should be home. I let myself in using a spare key. I didn't see my mother-in-law's shoes, so she might be out shopping. Instead, I noticed unfamiliar high heels at the entrance. As I pondered if they could be hers, I heard noises coming from the master bedroom. I had an ominous feeling, so I dumped my bags in the hallway and started filming with my phone as I approached the bedroom. Amidst the clattering noise, I could hear the voices of a man and a woman. I braced myself and thrust open the bedroom door. There was Jackson, naked, and an unknown woman sprawled on the bed. The woman spotted me and let out a startled squeal. Then Jackson gasped, "Whoa, Anna." Oddly enough, I felt incredibly composed, so I decided to quietly keep the camera rolling. The woman, in a state of panic, quickly gathered the scattered clothes on the bed to cover herself. "Is she the wife? You're joking, right? You said you divorced her 6 months ago." "You said you were going to marry me," the woman exclaimed. "Not only was this guy tormenting me, but he was also cheating. He must have thought I was the perfect little housemaid." "No, it's not like that. It's not what it seems," Jackson muttered incoherently. Then the woman decided to get dressed and leave, declaring that they should break up. Silence engulfed the room. When I addressed Jackson, his shoulders twitched, and then he sprang out of bed, begging for my forgiveness. What a laughable sight. "I'll do anything, just please don't share that video." He seemed truly terrified. He must have been shocked by how well my strategy worked. "So you'll acknowledge your wrongdoings and agree to divorce me after all?" "I have evidence now," I proposed. He responded with a barely audible yes. Sometime later, Jackson and I officially got divorced. Of course, I received alimony, which he agreed to pay in one go. He was demoted after his superiors discovered he was shirking his work onto his colleagues. Moreover, his reputation at work plummeted due to rumors about him mistreating his wife and our divorce. Jackson, always a stickler for appearances, couldn't bear it and ended up quitting his job. Now, he seems to be living a hermit's life in his mother's house. His mom decided to continue living with him to make amends for the hassle he caused his wife, keeping tabs on his lifestyle and attempting to reshape his behavior. I do feel a bit sorry for him.